at 7 o'clock. Asylum seekers who cross the channel in small boats could be flown more than 4,000 miles away to Rwanda to be processed. Home Secretary Priti Patel is expected to sign a deal with the East African nation under plans to tackle people smuggling gangs. Zoe Gardner is from the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants.
This proposal is obviously equal parts cruel, absurd, and astonishing. What we can see on the face of it is a plan that would be disastrously cruel, be certain to cause people to be killed or harmed very severely, and that would cost us absolutely uncountable sums to enact.
Labour says the announcement is an attempt by the government to distract from Boris Johnson's breaking of COVID laws. Downing Street is preparing for the possibility of the Prime Minister receiving more fines from the Metropolitan Police. Lord Wolfson has resigned as a Justice Minister, saying he had no choice because of what he called repeated rule breaking. Ukrainian officials claim they've caused serious damage to the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet. The Moskva ship was reportedly hit by 2 missiles. Joe Biden has approved a further $800 million in U.S. military assistance for Ukraine, including artillery and helicopters. President Zelensky had appealed for the help as Russia increases its attacks in the east.
Poland, Moldova, Romania and the Baltic states will become the next targets if the freedom of Ukraine falls. Western countries have everything to make it happen, and the number of people saved depends on them.
A man has been arrested by police in New York over a mass shooting at a subway station. 62-year-old Frank James is accused of attacking 10 commuters in Brooklyn during Tuesday morning's rush hour. Another COVID-19 vaccine has been approved for use in the UK. The medicines regulator, the MHRA, has given the go-ahead for the jab developed by Valneva. It's the 6th vaccine to be authorised in Britain. And Sir Elton John has won the Mass Appeal Prize at this year's Global Awards. They bring together all of Global's radio stations to celebrate the biggest stars of music, podcasting and entertainment. Ed Sheeran was the big winner with a total of 3 awards.
Thank you so much for my Best Male Awards. Yeah, this is really, really cool. Thank you for Global for all the support. And then also Best British Act as well. I'm very, very honoured to be part of the British music industry. It's a very incredible landscape to be part of at the moment.
In the city, the FTSE 100 will reopen at 75.80 after closing up 4 points yesterday, and the pound buys $1.31 and €1.20. LBC weather, a dry day for most, with some warm sunshine developing after a cloudy start. Some rain for northwestern parts of the UK, a high of 19 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Conway.
So that's an Americano, 2 lattes and a flat white with oat milk?
Jasmine urgently needs trained baristas to make sure business in her coffee shop doesn't grind to a halt.
Oh, you want soya lattes?
Indeed can help her find great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. With Indeed Instant Match, we immediately show you candidates whose CVs on Indeed meet your sponsored job description. To start hiring, visit Indeed.com/try today.
Is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Morning, 3 minutes after 7 on Thursday, April the 14th. Some of you might remember Meryl Streep in Out in Africa. I had a farm in Africa. Well, we're going to have what appears to be immigrant camps in Rwanda. That is the solution. A cool £120 million it will cost. But is it the answer, or is it the most extraordinary, heartless gesture by a Conservative government, flying many asylum seekers, literally halfway around the world, 4,000 miles to these camps in Rwanda? We'll take your views on that. The terrorist killer of Sir David Amos will die in jail. Matt Jukes, Assistant Commissioner with the Met.
There is no elation in our family today following this sentencing. Our amazing husband and father has been taken from us in an appalling and violent manner. Nothing will ever compensate for that.
Reading a statement obviously from Sir David's family. In other news, and I say this carefully, but having been on the road quite a lot yesterday, there are problems with fuel in parts of the country. I don't want to start a stampede, but particularly if you have a diesel vehicle, and it's not just contained in London.
As protests at a Midlands oil depot continue, fears of fuel shortages ahead of the bank holiday weekend could be leading to more problems at the pump. For LBC from Birmingham, I'm Josh Giltrap.
And I'm LBC's Caitlin Parr in Cardiff, where there's worries that tourists visiting South and West Wales over the coming days could make the fuel shortage crisis even more difficult.
The party's not yet over for Boris Johnson, but how many parties are too many parties? As it is suggested, there is at least one more fine coming his way. We'll look at that in more detail. interesting developments for NATO as Sweden and Finland eye as early as they can entry into that organisation. Reaction in Moscow, you can imagine, will not be that good. Plus the real university challenge.
The maximum rate of interest on student loans for most graduates is RPI, which is a higher measure of inflation anyway, plus 3%. That could mean 12% interest being charged on student loans.
How is that even conscionable? 12% loan interest charge on loans to students. It's later in this hour.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
So to this plan involving Rwanda, male migrants, I stress that because I think that is quite important, male migrants who cross the channel in small boats will be sent to Rwanda in a multi-million-pound deal that will be announced by Priti Patel today, and we understand the Prime Minister will also be addressing this. We understand somewhere in Kent, but for security reasons, well, I don't know. For security reasons, I wouldn't be allowed to tell you if I did, but all we know is we understand that the Prime Minister will be somewhere in the county. The Rwandan government will be given an additional £120 million under the trial scheme. Priti Patel arrived in the Rwandan capital of Kigali last night and is due to sign a 5-year deal later today. Migrants will be flown to the African country while their claim for asylum is processed. The cost will be funded by the British taxpayer. Thousands of pounds per head is expected. But there's utter consternation and confusion within the Home Office. I remind you, the Home Office, just Windrush, so incompetent that when Amber Rudd gave figures concerning immigration, they were so bad, she was Home Secretary, they were so bad she had to quit. The visa scandal, that's just what, two or three. They seem to be at it again. Because this was Refugees Minister Lord Harrington, who you'd think, I'll stress his title again, Lord Harrington's, that is, Refugees Minister, speaking with my colleague Ian Dale on LBC this month.
Well, we haven't sent any refugees to...
No, but you're thinking of doing it, that's the point. For people who are coming over from Calais, maybe.
Why is that a rumour?
It's more than a rumour. According to the papers today, I saw it in the Times today, that is what is going to be announced in the next few days.
Well, if it's happening in the Home Office on the same corridor all the time, they haven't told me about it. But I mean, I'm having difficulty enough getting them from Ukraine to our country. There's no possibility of sending them to Rwanda.
Breathtaking. It's worth hearing again. Ian Dale and the Refugees Minister, Lord Harrington.
Well, we haven't sent any refugees to...
No, but you're thinking of doing it, that's the point. For people who are coming over from Calais, maybe.
Why is that a rumour?
It's more than a rumour. According to the papers today, I saw it in the Times today, that is what is going to be announced in the next few days.
Well, if it's happening in the Home Office on the same corridor all the time, they haven't told me about it. But I mean, I'm having difficulty enough getting them from Ukraine to our country. There's no possibility of sending them to Rwanda.
You want to, but you can't really laugh, can you? Because this is unfortunate individuals who are trying probably to get to safety, certainly trying to get to a better life, and let's be honest, we'd all do that. And they get here and they'll be sent to Rwanda, we think. The plan understandably criticised. Firstly, immigration rights organisations. Here's Zoe Gardner from the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants.
This proposal is obviously equal parts cruel, absurd, and astonishing. What we can see on the face of it is a plan that would be disastrously cruel, be certain to cause people to be killed or harmed very severely, and that would cost us absolutely uncountable sums to enact. It's complete nonsense, and it's purely meant as a distraction from Boris Johnson's struggles.
Is it part of Save Big Dog? Faith leaders aren't too impressed either. Let's lastly play you the Right Reverend Paul Butler, Bishop of Durham.
I really worry that this is not the right way to treat asylum seekers. We have an international duty under the Refugee Convention to look after asylum seekers well. There are big issues, they've got to be tackled. I don't think this is the way to do it. We need a deal with France, that's absolutely true, and I accept that there's been difficulties about bringing that about. We do need to make sure we treat people with human dignity. That's what each person deserves.
All right, enough of journalists, respectfully enough of people of faith as well and others. Let's turn to someone who should know. Glyn Williams was Director General for the Migration and Borders Group at the Home Office as recently as this year. Joins me now. Privilege even to have you on, sir. As the plan is slowly being outlined, your reaction. Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Thanks for having me. Well, I think the Rwandan plan is a really interesting interesting development. It's certainly an innovation, and I think and there are going to be many challenges around its implementation, that's for sure. But what's being done at the moment as regards channel crossings isn't working. So I think the Home Office does need to explore new options, and this is one.
Can it work?
It could be made to work. I mean, we will have obviously the cooperation of the Rwandan government, which is absolutely key first. And second, the Home Office. I mean, the Home Office won't just be able to wash its hands of these people. It will need to assure itself that their human rights under the ECHR and their refugee rights under the Geneva Refugee Convention are being met in theory and in practice in Rwanda. Otherwise, we won't be able to actually send anyone there because there will be legal barriers to it in the courts in the UK. So the Home Office will have to work very closely with the Rwandan government to make sure those conditions are being met.
Noting it's better than the alternative of being put out to sea in a tiny rubber dinghy with a spluttering outboard motor and not making it. Noting that, how humane is this, Mr. Williams?
Well, asylum seekers have a right to have their case heard, and if they have a genuine case, they have a right to protection under international law. What I think the government would argue is that they don't have a right specifically to protection in the UK. They have a right to be protected from the persecution they are suffering in the country they've come from. Now, if Rwanda can offer them that protection fairly and humanely, why not? They don't have a right to target the UK and specifically seek asylum here.
Lastly, you read that this is in part based on what's called the Australian model. Do you see similarities, Mr. Williams?
Well, there are some similarities in that the Australians have a deal with, I think, Nauru, where they've sent migrants who are trying to access Australia. And I think that is a sort of precedent, but I think Rwanda is... I think Nauru is heavily dependent upon Australia for all its resources and all the management of the project. Rwanda will be managing the project itself as an independent country in partnership with the UK, so I don't think it's an exact parallel. But I think that's probably the nearest parallel to this.
Bill Williams, thank you for your time. You served as Director General for the Migration and Borders Group at the Home Office as recently as this year. Steve Crawshaw is Policy and Advocacy Director of the organisation Freedom from Torture. I sense there may be strong views coming from you, Mr. Crawshaw. We'll hear more about the plan from the Prime Minister later today. As you've heard so far, your reaction. Good morning.
It is extraordinary, and we've heard this being floated as a rumour and a possibility for a long time now. It keeps floating up and down either Rwanda or other things. But what's extraordinary, and all the things that you've just heard described, it is cruel. It makes no sense at all. It goes fundamentally against the obligations that Britain has already signed up for. But also there's a real sense that the British government hasn't actually thought it through. But it is disastrous. I mean, just to take Freedom from Torture, we help torture survivors who arrived in this country, rehabilitation, helping to rebuild their lives. Some of them arrived from Rwanda. So there are so many levels it doesn't make sense. It is so cruel. And it's extraordinary that we have a bill going through Parliament at the moment, which MS Lords is trying to stop. And it's as though the government is completely ignoring everything the Lords are saying on that score.
I imagine we'll hear from the Prime Minister later today. It's necessary to cut down on the vile trade of people trafficking. He's right on that, though, isn't he?
He's of course right on that. What is extraordinary, though, in what we've seen as the first indications, you say we have the main speech yet to come, but the language being used already last night, today, is about how, yes, of course, we are compassionate, but this is against the illegal people arriving. He and they know very well, they keep using this language. You are not illegal when you are trying to get there. It is a matter of when you have the right to ask for something, and then the government has the right to decide whether or not. And in terms of the smugglers' routes, of course, that's catastrophic the way it is. The way to get past that is providing the safe routes, which the British government has repeatedly failed to do. They're failing even to help the Ukrainians, for heaven's sake, let alone others.
Well, this is actually virtually ended on my final question, Mr. Crawshaw. I'm going to be asking my listeners, what is the true face of Britain today? Is it the near 200,000 families living in this country who've opened their hearts and opened their doors to people from Ukraine? Or is it a policy that will see people who sometimes have travelled in extraordinary difficult circumstances flown 4,376 miles back to Rwanda? What's the true face of Britain?
I think your question is absolutely right. We have seen this huge outpouring of generosity from the British public on refugees fleeing the worst of the worst, and we have seen the government completely fail to step up to the plate on that. I think it is extraordinary that at this very moment they are trying to force through this nationality borders bill, which comes back to the House of Commons on Wednesday. The Lords have said no, no, no. It's in breach of the Refugee Convention, which Britain helped to shape because of the lessons of the Holocaust, how bad that was. The British public absolutely want to help those who've gone through the worst of the worst. The government seems to be coming up with these ideas which are not thought through and have cruelty throughout. I really think that's as un-British as you can get.
Steve Crawshaw is Policy and Advocacy Director at Freedom from Torture. Thank you for your time, Mr. Crawshaw. That's the question. What's the true face of Britain today? The tens of thousands of you who've come forward, which is just sensational. The stories we've heard of people travelling around the country to meet these Ukrainians at airports and looking after them, and going out and buying groceries and making their rooms as comfortable as they can, or a government that wants to ship people to Rwanda. Also, coming up in other news later in this hour, he will die behind bars. The terrorist who murdered, I'm not going to put his name out, by the way. The terrorist who murdered Sir David Amess, one of his close friends in politics, Anne Widdecombe.
He's never going to be able to enjoy walking free. He didn't get his martyrdom. He's got instead probably more than half a century of incarceration.
7:16 LBC News headlines, Simon Conway.
Plans to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda for processing are due to be announced by the government. Downing Street is reportedly braced for Boris Johnson to receive further fines for breaches of coronavirus laws. And the UK's medicines regulator has approved the COVID-19 vaccine developed by Valneva. LBC weather, a dry day for most with some warm sunshine, a high of 19 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Delays northbound to the Blackmore Tunnel from the Woolwich Road flyover, and that's because a lorry broke down earlier. All the lanes have been open for a while, but it's still very slow. The M20 remains closed eastbound between junctions 8 at Leeds Castle and 11 at Hythe, whilst the lorries are parked up on the motorway. On the train, southern services are running now at East Croydon, but with delays of about 20 minutes. And there's also delays of about 20 minutes on Great Northern, Thameslink and London North Eastern Railway services southbound between Stevenage and Finsbury Park, and that's because of an ongoing investigation. On the underground, there are severe delays on the Metropolitan line between Baker Street and Aldgate, minor delays on the rest of the line, and that's because of the ongoing shortage of trains.
This is LBC.
Co-op Funeral Care.
Hi, it's me again. I just had a thought. My wife adored the violin. She even played it at her wedding. So I think there has to be violin played at her funeral.
Oh, I'm sure she'd have loved that.
Yeah, as long as it's not me playing.
From funeral plans to funeral services, we're here to make it personal every step of the way. To find out more, visit your local Co-op Funeral Care or go to coop.co.uk/personalfunerals. Co-op is what we do.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973 LBC.
With 20% off all outdoor plants at B&Q, you can grow happiness this spring. From fragrant lavender to freshly picked herbs, find joy in your outdoors. Shop 20% off all outdoor plants in store today. Hurry, offer ends Monday. You can do it. Excludes bulbs and turf. Subject to availability. See in-store or DIY.com.
Vodafone is committed to connecting thousands of Ukrainian refugees with data, calls and texts through our Everyone.Connected program. Everyone needs connection. For the people of Ukraine, it matters now the most. If you're a charity working with Ukrainian refugees, search Everyone.Connected to request preloaded SIMs with data, calls and texts. Vodafone. Together we can.
UK registered charity. 6 months SIM with 20 gigabytes of data per month. Unlimited calls and texts for use in UK only.
Through our trusted dealers. Feel good your way with Hey Car. T's and C's apply.
Free Now is the mobility super app. That means more ways to get around London. So when you're in a rush and you're cutting it fine for the flight, all you do is tap and go and enjoy your ride. Get a low price ride quickly with black cabs and private hire cars. Or dodge the traffic with e-scooters and e-bikes. Free Now. Get there your way. Get the app for £12 off your first ride using code RADIO. Offer available on your first Free Now ride until the 30th of April. Geographic exclusions apply. 18 plus driving licence required.
Get a 25-litre bag of Wix topsoil. Was £4, now £3. Offer ends. Be house proud with Wix. Terms apply. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
What's your reaction to this extraordinary idea? I know it's been floated, the solution to the channel, but it appears to now to be a reality. Calls coming. Steve, we'll try and get to you first, but many others. Quickly through the front pages, unsurprisingly, and I would argue quite rightly, it dominates the front pages of a lot of your newspapers. For the Daily Telegraph, channel migrants to be sent to Rwanda. Pretty much the same theme ready for the Daily Mail. Rwanda plan to smash the channel gangs. Here we are on the front page of the LBC website as well. Channel migrants to be sent to Rwanda. Radical move to smash gangs. The Times. Channel boat migrants will be sent to Rwanda. Here we go, the Daily Express. PM's bold plan to send boat migrants to Rwanda. So we're running with that story there. The front page of the Eye has it as well. Patel in Rwanda signing deal to export Britain's asylum seekers. Well, at least we've got one export, I suppose. Other front pages of the FT, is it? No, so the Financial Times is Russia. Russian menace edges Finland and Sweden closer to NATO entry. That's a tremendous headline. That's exactly what's happening. 9 words, 10 words. Helsinki to decide in weeks. In Moscow, risk of inflamed. Well, let them. And you could hardly blame those two countries, could you? Quickly then through the other pages, the wash-up, aftermath, I should probably say, washes up of the Boris Johnson and Partygate. We'll be asking, by the way, how many parties are too many parties? As it is revealed that it is thought there is at least one more. I mean, hold on to your hats. It's suggesting these went to 12. I mean, if that were the case, that's going to be tough. And it would appear, again, it is reported that Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hall is to allow an emergency debate on Wednesday as to whether it just believes the Prime Minister has misled the House. Tory Law Chief quizzes the Metro, piling pressure on that story. The Daily Mirror understandably stood with it. Worse is to come. They've got the number of 3 more COVID fines. I say again, I think you almost pick a number now. The Guardian is with 3 there. Johnson, they face 3 more fines in party scandal. And good news on the front page of The Sun. There's an old newspaper man in every sense of the word. The witch hunt into The Sun's tremendous scoop concerning Matt Hancock having a relationship with one of his staff when he was in post will not be charged, will not be investigated. Press freedom has triumphed, and I think that's absolutely right. If you've got a serving health secretary who, shall we say, seems to be rather focusing more on one of his colleagues than on the crisis, that is the stuff that is in quotes the public interest. Steve's in Islington. Thank you for coming on, Steve. This Rwanda plan, would it gain your support? Good morning.
It would, 100%, Nick. So I'll tell you why, and I know you always say, well, it's a view. Well, this is my view, my friend. It will stop them coming here, especially the male ones, because they'll know they won't be able to come straight to England straight away and disappear into the ether like so many of them do.
Well, that's our fault, isn't it, though?
Coming across the channel, because
Steve,
they won't be able to come straight here in the first place. They've got to go somewhere else.
Steve, if they don't, no, see, this is how it works, Steve. I press the button, I slide the button, and then you stop. It's very simple like that. You see? There we go. If they disappear into the ether, Steve, surely that's the United Kingdom's fault, isn't it, sir?
No. Well, anything we can do to stop it happening is a good thing, and that's what they're doing. They're trying to stop it happening in the first place.
Why do you feel this?
It's not always our problem.
Why do you feel this so keen?
Because there's too many of them coming here, I'm afraid.
There's too many of them coming here. Okay, excuse me, just stay on the line. I want you to talk to Matthew in Heathrow. Matthew, are there, quotes, too many of them coming here, as Steve suggests?
Well, no, I mean, what we've got to be doing is, it's not human the way they're living in Calais. I mean, when I went to volunteer for Care for Calais, I actually met them. There's an estimated 20,000 odd on the continent trying to get to the UK, and I agree it's going to get worse coming up to the summer. But what we've got to do is, I mean, we've got to actually open up the Ukrainian scheme to these immigrants. And when they come,
are they fleeing? Are they fleeing their homes being bombed then, and women folk being raped? Is that what's happening?
Well, I mean, they're on from about a dozen countries. They're from Algeria, West Africa, Vietnam, Yemen, Ethiopia, Somalia, South Sudan, Kazakhstan, Syria, Afghanistan.
Okay, well, I'll come back to you. Thanks for the list of United Nations. Come on, Steve. My other caller, Matthew, saying we need to treat these folk much as we would the Ukrainians.
No, we can't treat everybody in it. This is a small island. Our structure, like National Health Service, housing, and everything, we can't do it all, my friend. We can't do it all.
We wouldn't have a National Health Service without people who've come to this country.
Well, that's always an argument, I know, but we can't take all these people. There's far too many coming across the channel. It's ridiculous, Nick.
Steve, thank you. Lastly, on Steve's point, Matthew, yesterday, where did that come from? Last year, 28,526 migrants across the channel. That is, I'm not suggesting the country's going to come creaking to halt. It's a lot of people to local authorities down in Kent and elsewhere to accommodate, isn't it?
Well, it's not. I mean, you see the UK's offered 200,000 families, have offered 200,000 places, and it's just a hostile environment with refugees, and it's just not human the way they're living in Calais. And I think Boris is just using to announce this now, the distraction, because, you know, it's just... I mean, he has his other issues.
Okay, it's a big dog, says Matthew. Thank you for your calls. More on this in a moment. 7:26 is the time. Let's go to other stories. And it was, of course, we had the conviction, but it was sentencing of the Islamic State terrorist who murdered Sir David Amess in a lone wolf attack at his constituency in Essex. Sentencing yesterday. The terrorist involved was given a full life term, so he'll die behind bars. We'll have more from journalist Tristan Kirk, who wrote the story up, his courts correspondent for the London Evening Standard. Before we hear from Tristan, Matt Jukes, who's one of the senior officers at the Met, Assistant Commissioner, reading a statement from Sir David's family.
There is no elation in our family today following this sentencing. Our amazing husband and father has been taken from us in an appalling and violent manner. Nothing will ever compensate for that. We will wake each day and immediately feel our loss. We will struggle through each day for the rest of our lives. Our last thought before sleep will be